Hi, Billy the Artist here. Today we're going to draw Shaun the Sheep from the new movie, but it's using techniques that are in these, and you can click on the links and you can see the time-lapse of Peter Capaldi as the Doctor from Doctor Who and Jenna Coleman as Clara Oswald, and you can see those time-lapse videos of the drawings completely, and these were quite long. This was about a day's work and this was about a day's and a half, but all the techniques that I'm going to show you today on Shaun the Sheep are pretty much what I use on here. So it's a kind of free-for-all drawing and then shading with a pencil. I have my trusty 2B pencil, but I'm going to go down to an 8B, and this little holder, you can get these in your art stores or online, just helps you when your pencil gets a little bit too small and you can't hold it properly. It extends it so you don't lose a lot of your pencil, so remember that's a nice simple art tip. But I've also got a 4B which is in between. Remember, the B are soft grades, H for hard, B for soft in your pencils. So anyway, here's my paper, and underneath I have another piece of paper, just a blank piece of paper, but it's a bit thicker because all of the scratches and everything, when you get to do your smoothing and your shading on your paper, you don't want like a kind of brass rubbing, you don't want that turning up on your actual image that you're drawing. So when I use either the trusty finger or a cloth, a piece of kitchen roll or a smoother for smudging, having a nice smooth surface means you get a nice decent tone. But anyway, we shall now crack into drawing Shaun the Sheep. So from the top we will just put a line on where the top of his head will be, where you get the top, and then you've got the bottom part of the image. This is his Twitter profile picture, where his body is, but we need just some little marks to help with placing shapes, and bottom of his nose is a little bit underneath. So we've got a nice big oval shape at first, which is his head with his nice big nose, and kind of across the centre, you've got the centre of your page, you've got where his nostrils are, and they are kind of at a little angle, and then above at the top you've got two circles which will be his eyes, and then his little hairdo which looks like a fluffy shower cap that kind of comes round, and then his lovely handlebar ears that come out the side are just nice big ovals. And then you've got another oval inside. I mean, again, you can, if you want, put the circles in for his pupils rather quickly. This is quite light at the moment, but I'll darken it down very, very shortly. And coming down on his right ear, we've got that shape coming off. And he's kind of hanging with his homies, isn't he, ready for his movie debut. And from the side here, you would have like a big letter C that comes out and he goes, meh, because there isn't a lot of dialogue with our Shaun, is there? It's amazing how from a Wallace and Gromit film he's become an incredible character and series all on his own on the farm with all the exploits that he gets up to. Aren't they just fantastic fun? So now we've got his shoulder coming off, but you've got his hand. So if we just draw a quick oval in for the shape of his hand, and there's his thumb, and there's one of his paws, claws, fingers, who knows. Anyway, there's one, and then that comes off, and obviously it's missing on the photo, but we can just draw his elbow in. And you've got his shoulder, and then that can come down. And this is the thing with folded arms. You can think they're a little bit difficult, but here's his little hoof, his little paw, fingers there, and then that will go underneath his thumb of his left hand, and there you've got his fingers nice and quickly, and then you've got that arm is going to come down. Obviously his thumb is hidden on that side, and here we have just again blocking the shapes down. Remember the Olaf video for absolute beginners, showing if you wanted to grid it up, if you want to grid the image up, and then you can put your reference points down. But I quite like this free fast drawing, which is absolutely lovely. So now we'll just darken up the outlines quite quickly. And remember, use the curve of your wrist for the shapes, and don't rest your elbow on the table. If you're doing something that's opposite the curve of your wrist, make sure your arm is free flowing, and that way you can do that curve which is opposite. Or turn your paper round if you're not that confident, and then use the curve of your wrist again. So there we have his head just appearing, and we need to get the shape of his eyes in a little bit better, and that one comes to about there. So again, his eyes are perfect circles, so you could, well, near perfect circles apart from like this bit underneath here, but that shape on the outside is a fairly perfect circle, and especially the pupil in the middle is a perfect circle. So you could use a template, or if you've got enough a compass or enough shapes to draw your circles, then you could do that if you wanted. But again, just don't mind the actual scratchy shapes of the actual drawing, because it gives it life, it gives it a spontaneity. If you look at old masters' drawings, and right in the centre he's got the absolute pupils, and then he's got the highlights, which we'll leave there for later. So if we, excuse me, my computer's just asking me to do something, and if we wanted an absolutely perfect drawing, you wouldn't want these lines. But if you look for old master drawings, you'll see how fluid the sketches are, and sometimes how scratchy they can be. But as with the Doctor Who drawings that I've done, they are very long, take a very long time, and some of the drawings that I've produced in the past, oh, done his hair a little bit too far, have gone and taken me like 2, 3 or 4 days to actually produce. But here we're just doing a very quick drawing. So now I want his ear coming off, and that curve going under, and then the recess inside, and then his right ear comes down, and that joins on there, and then you get the line that creates the delineation. So now we know we can come down a bit as we look on the shape of his head. We know that that can come round, and his nostril has got to be in line with the pupil. So we can put that in a slightly better place, and then we can come over up and a bit, and we know that's down a little bit there, and so there's his nostril hanging with his homies. Again, I'll just draw quickly these lines for his hands and on his arms, and then a little bit of fluff, just a nice curve, and follow the flow, and then his left hoof coming down. Then we need his fluff coming down, joining his thumb, and then his right shoulder going out, and his arm coming underneath there. And there we have, we can do his body coming down. That's a very quick and simple outline. Now again, you can colour that in with crayons or anything else, but we're going to go and we're going to do shading with pencils now. So I'm going to use my 8B, and if you press on lightly and just very, very gently fill it in, you see the tone change on the paper. For his wool, and so we fill his body in and underneath the shadow, and his chin is going to make it a little bit darker. But first we just get your kitchen roll or your finger, whatever you want to use, and we just smooth that down a lot. And straight away you've got quite a nice tone. Now the highlights that are on his hair and down his back, again, you can erase if you've gone over the edge, you can erase over the outside if you want to, but you can use either a normal rubber or if you've got a putty eraser, and this is kind of quite good, you can just stipple on and give some effect of the highlights of his woolly sheepy fur. And that way you get different tones. You can stipple it and change the direction, keep pointing the end of your putty rubber up, and that helps with producing the effect of the light on his fur. Now we're going to block in his ears, and this time we'll just press on a little bit darker so his ears go in quite nicely and quickly. And even now I can see a line there from underneath. The paper's not thick enough. I needed a thicker piece of paper or a piece of card. Sometimes I'll use a piece of white Conti board to help with my drawing. I'll put that underneath instead. But I like the texture and the colour of my old wooden, because this drawing board is very old. In fact, I think it's older than me. I got it second hand when I was a late teenager, so it's probably very, very old, and it's seen a lot of use in my art life, as you can see with all the splats and things around. So there's a mid-tone going down on the paper. And again, this is my 4B, which is kind of in the middle of the soft grades down to 8B. And Shaun's eyes look a little bit dazed and confused at the moment as we do his left hoof and his right shoulder, and we put the tone down. So now if we very carefully remember just to let the white of the paper show that highlight, and you can press on a little bit darker to actually show his pupil and his iris. But leave the highlights showing that are in the photo, in his profile picture. So now you've got his eyes and he's actually starting to look something like, but you've got quite a flat tone. Now again, with your mid-tone, just smooth it out and don't worry about going over the edges, and it starts to look really lovely. And I used to go drawing, I showed you in the beginnings how to draw anything part 1, the links underneath in the description in this actual video. I'm sure I showed you some of the sketchbooks that I did where I drew from life. And when I used to draw musicians, it was great just using your finger to smudge the pencil around to fill in larger areas, and then you leave some of the pencil lines, the scribbly lines, looking quite good and groovy. So now here we have quite a nice smoothed out, and even the texture of the paper, and as you smooth it over, kind of looks like the felty nature of Shaun's face. But anyway, I've now got my 8B. Look at my finger, even my finger's getting there. And I'm going to draw his nostrils, because this is the softest and darkest. So I'm going to colour the nostrils in, and you can press on. If you really press on, it goes really black and shiny. And some people don't like that. They want to try and keep it as matte as possible with the pencils. I don't mind. I quite like seeing the pencil lines dug in. And the light's kind of coming from this way, so there in between his eyes you've got a little bit of shadow to the side, and then again coming off here and that gives him a little bit of shape. And if you press on slightly, you can start to increase the shadow, kind of down under his chin and down here, and give a little bit more shape to his head. Because of the light coming from this way, the shadow will be cast on this side. Just the way the shapes work when light hits it. Again, just build that up nice and simply. And then you've got a little bit of shadow under his fluffy hair bit and down this side. And obviously underneath his ears is going to be darker. Right the way up to his head. And you can just increase it and show a little bit of reflected light on that edge as the natural light reflects off. And on this side, the shadow comes over the top of his ear as well, that's cast by his hair and the side of his head. And so here we want nice dark underneath, coming right the way down to the edge of his ear. Shaun's already starting to really look like he's coming together. And then the same thing, we want the shadows for the dark on his hands, under his right hoof that's over his left arm, the shadow of his left arm coming down to his hoof, and then we can just darken it down a little bit, kind of get a mid dark. And his thumb and his right arm is completely dark, and so will be his right elbow. And then the same thing for his left hand and his left arm. That's going to be quite dark coming down as you fill that up. You can darken under his chin a little bit. And then with his hand and his arm, and you can see the pencil lines, and you can either leave them or, again, get your tissue and just smooth them around, and you can smooth off the tone and make it quite nice and fluid. And then you can push the pencil round and create the shapes again around his nostrils and under his ears. And see, that's gone really dirty, so I just want to clean a bit so that I can really just push it around his eyes a bit. And there's Shaun looking quite dapper and dandy, posing prior to his movie coming out. Now again, I've lost some of the very, very darks, so now with my 8B again, I'll just intensify where I want the darks to really be accentuated. So obviously on his ears, coming all the way down, this is the darkest shadow on this side, going up over his ear and coming down, and then the dark in between his eyes, and then where that goes around the side of his eyeball, and here going up the side of his cheek, and then just smush that down again. And there we have Shaun looking quite nice and spangly. Now again, you can rub out right to the edge. If you want to, just to clean up your picture, or you can leave it where it's gone over. Remember, your rubber, your eraser, is a drawing tool as well, which is really helpful, as well as your smudging. And again, on his eyes, we want the full proper highlight just to clean up. So if you clean up in his eyes where you've smudged over just a little bit, and then you can use a smudging tool or a very fine part, you can just push a little bit of the shade right down, nice and gently. Or you could use something like a 2H pencil, just to give the three-dimensional quality to the shape of his eyes, which are like ping pong balls, aren't they? And then push the black around as well. And then finally, if you want to, I'll use the 4B for this, you can just accentuate some of the dark lines around the edge to make him stand out. And that is Shaun the Sheep, nice and quick. There you go, without the reflected lights. That's Shaun the Sheep, nice and quickly done in the same way, using the same techniques that I did for the Doctor Who drawings of Peter Capaldi and Jenna Coleman. So anyway, I hope you have enjoyed my Shaun the Sheep tutorial, and I hope that you get your pencils out and get the tissues out, and that you try these techniques of shading and drawing and enjoy the Shaun the Sheep film. But please do like and subscribe for more how to draw tutorials from Billy. Thanks very much for your time. Have a lovely day. Ta-da.